Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be telling you 5 questions you must ask your employer before you take any job or any project. Before you get employed for any job at all or for any project, before you go into any working agreement, you have to make these 5 things very clear from the onset. You don't ask these questions after you've started because it might be too late. So you should ask these questions before you take that job, before you sign that contract, before you go into any working agreement with any employer as a software engineer. Number 5 question is, who would I be working with on the team? Who is currently on the team? Who will I be reporting to? Who will I be working with? So let's say you're a front-end developer. You have to know who are the back-end developers, who is the product manager, who is the product designer. You have to know everybody on the team. You have to know who you'll be working with. You have to know this because you don't know if you're the only one on the team and they just want to increase your work. They might not tell you that they want someone who will view the whole project. They might advertise for a front-end engineer, but they are looking for someone who will view the whole project. So you need to know who is already on the team and who they plan to employ on the team. So if you're working with other front-end engineers, it's good to know from the start that, oh, I'm not working on this alone. I'm working with other front-end engineers. If you're a back-end engineer, it's good to know that, yes, I have other back-end engineers I'm working with, so I'm going to be working on maybe a part or a quota. So you should know who you'll be working with on the team. You should know who you'll be reporting to. You should know everybody on the team. So ask the question of, who would I be working with on this team? Who is currently on the team? Do you plan to employ more people on the team? Number 4 question you should ask your employer is, what are your KPIs and how do you measure my success? You don't want to go into a contract and work with someone who doesn't know how to measure your progress and how to measure your success. It will be very hard to work with someone who cannot track your success. If you know your KPIs, it will be very easy to track your success. It will be very easy to track your progress. You know if you're making progress, you know if you're meeting the goal, because you cannot have success without a goal. Success is an achievement of a goal. So if there's no goal, there is no success. So if you want to be successful in a project or in a contract or in a work relationship, you have to know how success is being measured. Let's say you're building a mobile app, for example. You need to know, are there milestones we are covering? At every milestone, how do you measure the success at every milestone that we're working on? So you need to be very clear on the KPIs. KPI means key progress indicators. So you need to know how progress is being measured and how they will know that you're actually doing good work, or if you're not doing good work, how you can measure. So it's good to know the KPI, and they also tell you so that you can also measure your progress and you can also measure your success. Number 3 question you want to ask your employer is there a strict deadline? And what happens if we don't meet up with the project at the deadline? This is very applicable to you, especially if you're a freelancer. Most times we underestimate the time required to execute the project. Let's say we tell the client that a project will take 3 months. But when you start the project and it's been 2 months and you've not even gone halfway, how would I handle the situation if at the end of 3 months you are not able to deliver the whole project? You need to know how they will handle a situation where you don't meet up with the deadline they've set or the deadline that's agreed on. You don't want to work with someone who will get really mad at you or will get pissed at you for not meeting the project deadline, because they need to understand that sometimes things don't happen the way we planned. They need to understand that, yeah, this is what you thought, but when you started the project, there was a whole lot more you had to do to deliver a very good project. So you need to ask your employer or your client that if I don't meet up with the due date, would there be room for additional time to finish up the project? I will not advise that you work for someone who is not very flexible with time, because there will be so much pressure. And if you're not someone who can work under pressure, you will lose it. If you know you don't like to work under pressure, you need to know how flexible your client is or your employer is, especially when it comes to overlapping the due date of delivery. Number 2 discussion you should have with your employer is, be very clear on your work contract. So if you're a freelancer, you want to take a job as a freelancer, you need to be very clear as to what happens after my contract is due. When I deliver this project and everything is okay, are you paying me for maintenance? How long am I staying for reviews and for maintenance? If you're not very clear on how long you're staying after the project delivery, they will always keep coming back to you to be fixing bugs, even after a year or after 2 years. So you need to be clear on how long you're staying to check the project and be sure that the project is working okay before you sign off on it. So if it's 3 months, if it's 6 months that you're staying, it should be very clear on the work contract. ensure that every project or every work agreement comes with a work contract. And this work contract should be clear on everything. You shouldn't leave any detail hidden. On the contract, you should discuss payment, you should discuss payment term, you should discuss your KPIs, you should discuss your team, you should discuss everything about the project and how you will be performing on the project. So that after a year or two, they will not come and meet you and say, oh, this thing is not working well, this feature is not working well, you have to fix it. You should have a contract that will address every of these issues, so that they don't keep coming back to you even after you've left the project. Be very, very clear on your contract. Be very, very clear on how long you're staying for maintenance. Be very, very clear on the services you can offer after your work contract. So if they are going to pay you retainership for every review you make after the contract, you should state this in the contract. If you're going to employ someone to do the maintenance, it should be stated on the contract, so they don't keep coming back to you when you moved on to another project and they are dragging you back to this former project and telling you this thing is not working like it used to. This thing is not working like it used to. So be very, very, very clear on how long you're staying behind to fix bugs and to fix issues after the project delivery. And for number one, discuss payment in detail. Discuss payment in detail. So before you go into any work agreement with a client or with an employer, you should discuss your payment and your remuneration and any benefit that is attached to that project. If they're giving you equity, it should be discussed in detail. How much they are paying you should be discussed in detail. Let's say you're a freelancer and you're supposed to build a software for an organization. You should know how much is the total amount they are paying you, how much should be paid before you start work, how much should be paid after you finish your work. If you're charging your client or your employer by milestones, you should discuss the payment that comes in at every milestone. And this can be very flexible, whether you're charging by milestone, whether you're charging for the whole project, because if you're charging by milestone, you need to know at what point is this completed. So you should be very, very, very clear on this, so you don't start having work issues in the future. That's why you have to make these things very, very clear from the onset that, oh, if this is the agreement you're making, even if you're taking the whole payment after the project delivery, it should be clearly stated that before I hand over this project to you, this amount will be made. You shouldn't hand over a project to a client or to an employer when they have not fulfilled their own part of the contract, either by making payment or doing something they're supposed to do to you. If you're going to be getting payment by installment, you have to be very, very clear by the number of installments and the payment term, the payment plan. Don't leave this part out. It is very, very important. There are a whole lot of people in trouble today because they did not define the payment plan very well with their employer. I would advise that you're very, very sensitive during this conversation. You will know a good employer, you will know a bad employer by how they respond to your questions. You should know if this is someone you want to work for long term. You should know if this is a project you shouldn't take. You should be able to spot the red flags from how they respond to your questions that you're asking. You should try to have so much interaction. You should ask so many questions to know who they are, how they treat people. Try to even know who has worked on this project before. Why did this person leave? If you can even get the contact of the people who have worked on it before, you can go ahead and even communicate to the people who worked on the project before and ask them, how was your experience with this employer? How was your experience with this client? Why did you leave the project? Did he give you any trouble? Did you have any financial problem? Did he breach any contract and all that? Try and ask a whole lot of questions, because it will save you a lot if you can know in detail everything about the person you want to work for. You don't want to work for someone who is not kind. You don't want to work for someone who puts you under so much pressure. You don't want to work for someone who will not pay you well. You should be looking to work for someone who values your skill, who values your time, values your resources, values your skill. So if the person doesn't show value, the person doesn't show empathy towards you, you'll be able to spot this from even asking these questions. You can even know if a client is fraudulent by them trying to dodge some of these questions. If you're trying to be very open with some of these questions and they are shying away from you, you're trying to dodge, you know that they are trying to hide something from you, and that's a red flag you can spot, so you don't fall in the trap of working for someone who will not value your skill. Always be willing to walk away. You may not have so much money, you may not have money in your account, and this might seem very, very juicy. This might seem like, oh, this is going to give me money. But if these things are not clear, it will put you in so much trouble that you might not be able to escape from. So always be willing to walk away so that you don't get trapped in working for someone who will put you in problem. There are some people who have signed contracts that have put them in more problem, and they can't even get away from it because they already signed the contract and the contract will be binding them to a very toxic environment. So before you sign any contract, read it in detail. You can have a professional help you go through a contract and help you spot out the areas that may affect you negatively. These questions will help you to know the kind of person you're working for, will help you to know the kind of working environment you'll be exposed to, it will help you to know the people you'll be working with. So you need to check all these areas because you want to be productive, you want to be resourceful, you want to give out your best. So don't miss any of these areas, and I believe if you ask all these questions, you check all these boxes, you will have a very, very smooth relationship and there will be no problems, and you will enjoy yourself as a software engineer. Truth is, software engineering can be very, very enjoyable if you put some of these things in check. People who find it very difficult being a very good software engineer are people who don't check these areas and they just sign some contracts blindly, and they end up having a very hard time working with an employer or working with a client. So if you bring out all these whole details and you check them out, you ensure that everything about your work, both before the project, during the project, and after the project is settled, you will have a very, very good time as a software engineer and you will enjoy your work. I hope this helps you know the kind of questions to ask an employer or a client before you sign that work contract. And I believe you'll have a very, very good time as a software engineer. See you in the next one.